When I say HOA Karen tried to burn my lake cabin, I'm not exaggerating. The first time I saw the charred siding by the porch, the black streaks up the wall, and the faint smell of burned wood still clinging to the air, I knew someone had crossed a line. My cabin wasn't just damaged, it had been targeted. Before I could even pull out my phone, I heard the sound of sandals scraping across gravel. There she was, Karen, the self-proclaimed queen of the HOA, oversized sunglasses on her face, clutching her iced coffee like it gave her authority. She looked at the burned patch on my cabin, then back at me, smirking. "Accidents happen," she said casually. "Old cabins like this are nothing but fire hazards. If you'd listened to the HOA, you'd have had it torn down months ago." My chest tightened. "You're telling me you had something to do with this?" She didn't flinch. "I'm saying the community has rules. Unsafe structures get removed one way or another. Consider this a warning." I stood there, staring at the woman who thought she could dictate the fate of something I'd poured my life into. She wasn't just being nosy this time, she had taken things too far. And the smug grin on her face told me she thought she'd won. What she didn't know was that I wasn't about to roll over. She didn't know who she was dealing with. And most of all, she didn't know that the man she was trying to bully into tearing down his own cabin happened to own the very demolition company she thought could be used against him. This fight had just started, and she had no idea how badly she'd miscalculated. That cabin had been mine for more than a decade. When I first bought the land, there was nothing but scrub brush, a rocky shoreline, and a dream I wasn't sure I could afford. I worked long weeks at my job, saving every spare dollar, and built that cabin piece by piece over the years. Nights after work, weekends, when everyone else was relaxing, I was cutting lumber, laying down beams, and hammering nails until my hands blistered. It wasn't perfect, and it sure wasn't fancy, but it was mine. Every plank of wood and every patch of roofing carried a memory. The small dock out front, where I taught my nephew to fish, the fire pit where friends gathered in the summer, even the creaky porch swing I'd fixed 3 times, but never replaced those, weren't just objects. They were pieces of my life. That cabin was where I went when the world felt too heavy. It was my escape, my reward, and my reminder that hard work pays off. I had spent years building it, paying for it, and keeping it alive through storms, floods, and brutal winters. And now here I was, standing in front of charred siding because someone thought they could play God under the cover of HOA rules. The truth was, my cabin wasn't just real estate. It was proof of who I was, a man who worked with his hands, who stood on his own 2 feet, who didn't bend to pressure. Losing it to some arrogant neighbor with too much time and too little respect wasn't just about property. It was about principle. Karen probably thought she was dealing with another pushover, someone who'd back down at the first sign of trouble. She couldn't have been more wrong. Every nail I'd driven into those walls, every dollar I'd spent keeping that place upright, was a reason to fight harder. And believe me, I wasn't about to let her or the HOA strip that away from me. This wasn't just about saving a cabin anymore. It was about making sure people like her learned there were consequences for trying to bully others into submission. The next morning, I drove back out to the cabin, determined to get answers. I hadn't slept much the night before, and every time I closed my eyes, I saw those charred boards on the siding. When I pulled into the dirt road leading to my lot, I wasn't surprised to find Karen already there. She was standing near the fire pit, iced coffee in hand, as though she owned the place. I got out of my truck and walked straight toward her. "We need to talk," I said, keeping my voice steady. She didn't move. "Oh? About how you're putting the whole community in danger by keeping this cabin standing?" My fists clenched at my sides, but I forced myself to stay calm. "This cabin is mine. Paid for, titled, and maintained. You have no right to touch it, much less set it on fire." She let out a sharp laugh and shook her head. Prove it. The HOA has authority here, and they've already decided these old shacks are a hazard. You either bring it down, or we'll make sure it comes down for you. I took a step closer. Listen carefully. This is private property. You don't get to play firefighter, building inspector, and jury all at once. You try something like this again, and it won't be me you're answering to, it'll be the sheriff. Her smirk widened, and she leaned in like she was daring me to do something. Call him. Go ahead. You'll look ridiculous when he tells you the same thing I am. Unsafe structures get cleared. The community won't back you up. You're alone in this. The arrogance in her tone was enough to make my blood boil. I stared at her, searching for even a flicker of doubt, but there was none. She was convinced the HOA gave her unlimited power, and she wanted me to feel cornered. I finally stepped back, not because she had intimidated me, but because I knew this wasn't the moment to strike. You've made a mistake, I said flatly, and you're going to regret it. Karen folded her arms across her chest. We'll see about that, cowboy. We always do. Her words hung in the air like a challenge. She thought this was over, but she had no idea I was just getting started. Karen wasted no time turning up the heat. Within days, I started getting letters from the HOA, stamped in red and filled with threatening language about community safety standards. Each one accused me of keeping a dangerous structure that posed a risk to the neighborhood. They warned of fines, legal action, and forced removal. I marched into the HOA office with the latest letter in hand. The receptionist barely looked up before saying, "You'll need to take it up with the board." "I want to know," I said firmly, slapping the letter down on the counter, "who authorized this nonsense. My cabin is not abandoned, not unsafe, and not under your control." She gave me a plastic smile. "Sir, our records show the structure doesn't meet safety requirements. Until it's brought down, the board has the right to act in the community's best interest." I leaned in closer. "You don't have that right. Not over my land. Not over my cabin. If Karen put you up to this, tell her I'm not playing games." For a moment, her smile faltered, but she quickly shuffled the papers on her desk and muttered something about rules. Walking out, I realized what Karen's game really was. She wasn't acting alone. She was using the HOA as her weapon. Every attempt I made to reason was met with walls of bureaucracy and smug half-answers. A week later, I came out to the cabin to find bright orange CONDEMNAD signs nailed to my porch posts. Karen stood a few yards away, pretending to walk her dog, but her smirk gave her away. I tore the signs down and shouted across the lot, "This is harassment." She cupped her hands around her mouth and called back, "It's community protection. Maybe next time you'll listen?" It was clear, no matter what I did, she was going to keep pushing until she got her way. Every path I took, letters, phone calls, visits to the office, ended in dead ends. But here's the thing about me. I've never been one to give in when someone tries to push me out of my own life. Karen thought she was untouchable with her HOA backing her. What she didn't know was that I was about to change the rules of the game, and I had the tools to do it. I knew fighting Karen head-on was a waste of time. She thrived on confrontation and had the HOA parroting every word she fed them. If I wanted to win, I needed to be smarter, not louder. The first step was paperwork. I dug out every document tied to the property: my deed, tax receipts, the survey map with clear boundaries. I didn't just collect them, I made certified copies. If the HOA wanted to pretend they had jurisdiction, I'd bury them in proof they didn't. Next, I called Mark, an old friend who'd handled the closing when I bought the land. He was a straight-talking lawyer who hated bullies as much as I did. After I explained everything, he didn't hesitate. "Send me the letters. Every single one," he said. "If they keep this up, We'll draft a cease and desist that'll make them think twice." But I didn't stop there. Karen wanted the cabin gone, claiming it was unsafe. Fine. I owned the very demolition company she thought she could use against me. My crews handled everything from clearing condemned homes to tearing down commercial buildings. I knew the codes, the permits, the loopholes, and the deadlines better than any HOA president could dream of. So I made some calls. My foreman laughed when I told him the story. "Boss, if they try to order us in, we'll tell them exactly where to shove it. We don't touch private property without the owner's signature. That's the law." That was the edge I had. Karen believed she could bully me with threats of forced demolition. What she didn't know was that the only company capable of doing the job in this county belonged to me. If she wanted my cabin gone, she'd have to come through me, and that wasn't happening. I also reached out to the sheriff's office. Deputy Miller, a man with no patience for HOA theatrics, told me plainly, "If she sets foot on your property again or tries anything destructive, call us. That's trespassing, plain and simple." By the end of that week, I wasn't just ready to fight back, I was ready to flip the whole situation on its head. Karen thought she had cornered me. In reality, I'd lined up the law, my lawyer, and my own company as shields. The next time she made a move, I'd be waiting. And this time, it wouldn't be me scrambling to defend my cabin. It would be her scrambling to defend her pride. It didn't take long for Karen to make her next move. A few days later, I arrived at the cabin to find her standing in the driveway with 2 HOA board members in tow. She was waving a clipboard like it was a sheriff's badge. "This is it," she announced the moment I stepped out of my truck. "Final notice. Your unsafe cabin is being removed this week. The HOA voted." I crossed my arms. "You don't get to vote on my property." One of the board members cleared his throat nervously. "Technically, Karen, we..." But she cut him off, snapping quiet. "This is community policy. Unsafe structures are condemned, and demolition will be scheduled." She turned back to me with that smug grin I knew too well. "You can't stop it. My crew will be here in 2 days." I let her words hang in the air before slowly smiling. "Your crew?" I asked. "That's funny. Because in this county, there's only one licensed demolition company authorized to do that kind of work. And I own it." Her sunglasses slipped down her nose as her face went pale. "You're lying." I pulled a folded business card from my pocket and handed it to her. "Call the number. Ask for the owner." "I'll answer." The board members exchanged nervous glances. Karen's jaw clenched, but I wasn't done. I stepped closer and lowered my voice just enough for the smugness to drain from her eyes. "You ever try to light my cabin up again, I'll have the sheriff slap you with charges so fast you won't remember your own name. And if you think you can use the HOA to tear down what's mine, you're out of luck. The only people with the power to swing the wrecking ball here work for me." She opened her mouth, but no sound came out. The board members shuffled awkwardly, clearly realizing they'd been dragged into a fight they couldn't win. That was the moment her empire of arrogance cracked. For the first time, Karen didn't look smug, she looked scared. Karen tried to save face. She stormed back to the HOA office, pushing the board to keep issuing letters, threatening fines, and sending me more notices stamped URGENT. But with my lawyer firing back and the sheriff aware of every stunt, her efforts collapsed like wet paper. The final blow came when Mark, my lawyer, sent a cease and desist addressed not just to Karen, but to the entire HOA board. It cited trespassing, harassment, and defamation. It warned of lawsuits if they so much as touched a nail on my cabin again. Deputy Miller stopped by my property a few days later, looked over the charred siding, and shook his head. "You've got more patience than most," he said. "But if she so much as sets foot on this land again, Call me directly. I'll handle it." Word spread quickly through the lakeside community. Neighbors who had once kept their heads down started telling me they'd been bullied to letters about paint colors, lawn decorations, even the size of their mailboxes. Karen had made herself judge and jury, and people were tired of it. When the HOA board realized they'd backed a sinking ship, they quietly distanced themselves from her. Meetings got quieter. Letters stopped coming, and Karen's power shrank to nothing more than angry gossip whispered on porches. For me, the fallout wasn't about humiliating her, it was about finally having peace again, and knowing she couldn't touch what was mine. I spent the next weekend repairing the damage she had caused. I replaced the burned siding, repainted the porch, and tightened every bolt on the dock. By the time I was done, the cabin looked stronger than it had in years. As I stood on the porch, coffee in hand, I thought about everything that had happened. Karen had tried to scare me out of my own property. She had used fear, lies, and the HOA's weight to make me bow. But in the end, she didn't just lose, she exposed herself for who she really was. A bully who believed rules were for everyone else but her. The lesson was simple: when you stand your ground, bullies fold. They rely on people being too tired, too scared, or too polite to fight back. But once someone calls their bluff, their empire crumbles. I looked out across the water, the sunlight rippling on the surface, and felt something I hadn't in weeks' peace. My cabin was mine again. My land was safe. And Karen? She was nothing more than a bitter story people whispered about at HOA meetings. So if you've ever faced someone trying to push you around, whether it's a neighbor, an HOA, or anyone else, remember this. Stand firm, fight smart, and don't let entitlement win. Because sometimes the best revenge isn't just protecting what's yours, it's watching the bully lose everything they thought they controlled. If you enjoyed this story and want to hear more real-life battles where justice wins, subscribe to the channel. You never know, the next story might just inspire you to stand your ground too.